Hello there everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day and enjoying the Wasteland. What we're going to do today is break down 4 different starter character builds that I've come up with just to help you dip your feet into the Wasteland and to kind of explain some of the basic concepts, being the attributes, the skills, the quirks, and how they all kind of work together. So let's get right into it. Before we get into these specific character builds, I'm just going to give you some general tips for building your own characters, whether you follow these ones that I've built or you build your own. When you're looking into attributes, regardless of your play style or anything, there's a couple of key things you need to consider. Coordination for any character is really important. This increases your maximum action points, which I'll mention a few times throughout the video, and any character, regardless of who they are, should have the highest coordination that you can possibly do. There are a couple of other stats that you can really ignore for most characters. That would be luck for one of them. There is some lucky actions and things that you can trigger from this, but it isn't really that beneficial when you consider the other things you can do with your attributes. And the rest of them are really situational, except for intelligence. Intelligence, every 2 stats in intelligence, you gain an extra skill point for those levels. So this is important for the early stages. I wouldn't worry about maxing this out too much, but if you can do it, maybe put 4 in there to give yourself an extra couple of skill points to start out with. The other 2 would be awareness and strength. Depending on your character build, if you've gone melee, you want to put a few points into strength. If you've gone ranged, awareness is the one you want to go for. And you should have one character, just one, that has a high charisma for the leadership bonuses. You can put more people into this for the experience gain, things like that, but the leadership bonuses are the main things you want out of your charisma. When you're looking into skills, there are a few things that you can ignore in the early stages of the game, either because they're irrelevant until you get into later stages of the game, or because you'll find a companion very early on that will give you these social skills or other skills anyway. Things like Barter and Kiss Ass, both of them, you'll find a companion that will have this skill early on. Obviously, you can choose not to recruit them and you can put people into these skills, but that's really up to you. The other things is Toaster Repair, Survival, and Weird Stuff. Neither of them are really important for the very early stages of the game. I wouldn't stress too much about leaving them blank until you start to really level up your characters and you're looking for other things to spec into. Another thing is explosives. Again, same kind of thing. It will be important for traps so you can disarm them, but you can get around most traps, or if you just want to tank it through, sometimes I've just put my melee character, who is basically my tank, and just walked them through the trap and just healed them afterwards. It just makes it a little bit easier. One last tip is that anytime during your playthrough, you can create another custom ranger. It's a really good idea to do this if you want to create a ranger to be a specialist in 1 or 2 specific things. Say if you want to have a ranger that's really good at weapon or armor modding, or a ranger that has maxed out toaster repair because there's one specific toaster that you need to get, something like that. You can just create a new custom ranger to do that one specific thing, and the levels of these custom rangers will scale with your party. So if you create one later down the line, they'll be a much higher level, and what you can do here is, maybe you created a character to start off the game, you don't like them anymore, you can just switch them out, create a new one, and away you go. Now let's get into the character builds themselves. Now the first build we're going to look at here is this mechanic melee build, this big guy that I've built here. You can obviously make them look however you like. This is just how I've decided to make my characters look. So the first guy here, the main things we need to worry about is the background. Now all these other stuff, the name, gender, voice, you can make them whatever you like, same as the appearance, but the background here is the one we want to look at. So being a melee fighter, we really want to look at the lethal weapon background for the melee damage bonus. There are a few other things in here you could look at, like Bookworm for the extra XP, but as he's going to be primarily using melee, we want that melee damage bonus. Outside of that, as we move into the starter weapon, it's really up to you. Bladed or blunt weapon, it doesn't really matter. There is some perks later on in your playthrough that will affect, whether you're using bladed or blunt, but by that point, you've probably decided which way you want to go, and you would have also found either a bladed or a blunt weapon that you want to use for your playthrough. So that is, again, really up to you. Attributes is where it really starts to get important, I guess. Now, for every character that we're going to look at today, coordination is going to be important. And really, any build that you come up with yourself, coordination is always going to be very important. For a build like a melee build like this, having extra action points is good because you want to be able to move around the battlefield freely. This also helps with combat speed, which is another one we've got here in speed, which increases your combat speed and your evasion as well. Strength is the last, I guess, the really 3 primary stats that you want to have for a melee build, because you get the extra constitution, meaning your HP, as well as the melee damage bonus that you get for this as well. Strength is really important for some of the armor that you wear in the game, and for a melee fighter who's really going to be in the thick of things, you want to be able to wear some of that stronger armor to make sure that they're protected when they're right deep within the fight. Next, we'll look at the skills for our Mr. Melee guy. Obviously, the combat skill we're going to get is the melee combat. Now, I've put 2 points in here as the starter points. You can change this as you like. The other things we've gone for is lockpicking and mechanics. Lockpicking is important, not so much in the very early stages, but as you start to explore Colorado, lockpicking becomes really important so that you can get into various doorways and different other things that you can do with lockpicking, like safes and things like that. Mechanics I've actually found to be more useful than I thought it was going to be. There is always generators and vehicles and things around that you can interact with, and mechanics is actually pretty important. I wouldn't worry about maxing this or worrying too much about it in the early stages, but it is good so that you can interact with some of the generators in some of the tougher fights in the early stages to, turn off turrets or something like that. It's a beneficial stat to have. What I've tried to do is make our builds here, the 4 that we're going to look at, have a strength and then some minor skill sets that at least they don't overlap, so that the 4 starter characters that we've got, they all have their own strengths and they all complement each other well. The last thing we're looking at is quirks. There is 2 melee quirks that you can look at. Blunderer, if you want to do more damage, if you want to be, I guess, more of a glass cannon. The critical hit chance reduction doesn't really matter too much. The increase to your melee damage bonus is what's important here. So another 15% chance, or not chance, sorry, damage bonus to your melee damage. The other option that, if maybe you're playing on some of the harder difficulties, something you can look at is Medical Marvel. So you can't be revived during combat, which doesn't really matter that much, especially as you get to the high levels. The extra 5 to your constitution is also good for your HP. As you level up, the more HP you get, the easier it is to obviously not go down, and you can really just be a tank in the middle of the battlefield and just swing away at everyone. That is our mechanic melee fighter. The next person we're going to look at is this lovely lady here, this Leader Rifles, we've called her, because she's our leader and she's also going to be using rifles. For her background, there's really a couple you can go. There isn't something specific, like with a melee fighter, that has direct bonuses. There's a couple of things you could look at. Something like Raider Hater, bonus damage to humans plus 10%. This is important because you do fight a lot of humans in this game. There are other creatures that you fight, but humans are very regularly the main opponent that you will take on during your gameplay. There's a couple of other things you could look at, like Bookworm, extra XP. I mean, what else can you say? XP is always important for any kind of character that you're trying to build. And the other one that you could possibly look at, but I would say is maybe a little less important, is the Vicious? That's how you say it. Yeah, Vicious Avenger, which is penetration plus 2. Well, you could pick this up, but the thing with penetration is that it's also on your weapons as well. And as you progress in the game, you get better weapons, you also get better penetration. So this background becomes less important in the later stages. You want something that is beneficial from the start of the game to the end of the game. You don't want to really choose something that's only beneficial for a small portion of the game. The next thing that we'll look at for this Rifles lady is her starting weapon, which is obviously going to be our assault rifle. And then when we get into attributes, there is again 3 primary ones we want to look at. Coordination again, and awareness being the next one. Now, same as with our melee fighter, how strength was important. For a ranged fighter, awareness is important. For the range damage bonus, the hit chance, and perception. Perception does come important so that you can see hidden paths and things like that, but the main things here are hit chance and the range damage bonus. We've also put as much points as possible into charisma. The reason we have done this is because of this leadership range right here. Leadership range is really important because what matters here is, we're going to use the leadership stat, and that is really and the aurora around our leader and the distance that it's affected. So we want to make sure that, this range is as much as possible. So regardless of where our leader is, it's affecting all of our team. So as we move into skills here, what we're looking at is we've got automatic weapons at 1. Doesn't really matter here. We want to have her be able to use automatic weapons, but there are more important skills for our leader to worry about in the very early stages. The main one that we want to worry about here is leadership, which we put on 2. So as you can see the buffs there, it is important to have. So ally bonuses on kills, you get more damage, you get more crit chance. There are plenty of bonuses to have leadership, especially for the hit chance. This is really important as you continue to up this ability and give your team a better hit chance, because you don't want to be missing a lot in combat. You definitely want to avoid that as much as possible. What we've also done is put 1 point into Animal Whisperer. What I would recommend for any of your characters to have at least one character that has at least 1 point into Animal Whisperer. The reason for this, and I mentioned this in my tips video, which you can check out, I'll put a link up here somewhere. You can check that out. But what I'm talking about here is with the Animal Whisperer, you can charm animals. They will act as a friendly in combat. You will use them to fight other enemies. They'll also be a bullet sponge for you. You know, it doesn't really matter if they die, although it's sad. It's not one of your team members. And they will also attack, and they also give passive bonuses as well. So depending on the animal you recruit, they give a passive bonus to that party member. And as we look into quirks, again, this is a little different to our melee fighter. You could go for something like this perk here. I don't know how to say that word, but I'm sure you know how to say that word. What this will mean is you receive extra damage. It doesn't matter too much, as this leader isn't going to be, in the middle of the fight. But the melee ranged and the range damage bonuses are what you want to look at here. So the range damage bonus is what's important. I wouldn't say this is something you should go for on the higher difficulties because of the extra damage that you're going to receive yourself. This is something that it could kill you in the hard difficulties. The other thing you could go for on the harder difficulties is the bomb bag. So this will give you extra armor and it will reduce your combat speed. Your leader isn't going to be the main mover and groover in combat. Doesn't matter too much if their combat speed is reduced, if they can't move too much. You do want them to be more central to what's happening in the action. So you want to have them kind of in the center. You've obviously got your melee guy out in front. You'll have a couple of people, maybe a sniper behind them, and everyone else situated around them. So it doesn't matter too much if they can't move that much, and the extra armor is beneficial. But for any character you make, I would always recommend to pick up a quirk, any quirk that will actually help their build. So the last two that we have here is our Combat Medic and Mr. Sniper mods. Now the Combat Medic, for the background, what I've gone for here is the Sex Machine. Good name, right? But the reason we've gone for this is the combat speed. Your medic is going to be moving around a lot because what they're going to need to do is get close to people to heal them. You want to make sure that they have the ability to move around the battlefield quickly. So that's why we've gone for Sex Machine there. What you can also do in your starting weapon is, you can really choose whatever you like, but just because we've already got an assault rifle user, we have got a melee weapon user, we've gone with pistols. Now small arms, the skill uses both pistols and shotguns. So my combat medic in my playthrough has a shotgun and a pistol and switches between them pretty regularly depending on what's happening in the battlefield. The shotgun is really good because you can AoE enemies in that cone, and the pistol is good just to finish people off. So they are pretty versatile with small arms. For attributes, again, coordination, put that as high as possible. And the second two stats is speed for the combat speed, so they can move around a lot in combat, and intelligence. Intelligence is really important for a combat medic for the critical heal and the critical heal bonus and chance, as well as the extra skill points, because you want them to have the best abilities to heal people as you move around the field. You could also put more points in speed. It is really up to you how you do this, but what I do for me is more points into intelligence. As we move down into skills, we have 1 point into small arms for the pistols and shotguns, as I mentioned. We've got 2 points into the first aid for the healing ability. There are heal items that individuals can use without having first aid, but you do want to have a medic in your party, at least to some description, so they can pop some of those bigger heal items, like the ability to revive down team members in combat and use some of the more critical healing items. The other things that we've put points into for this lovely person here is 1 point into survival, which is really situational. I've only put it here because to avoid some of the world map encounters. If you like to do that, it is really up to you. And the other one is nerd stuff. Nerd stuff is more important than you might think it is. There is a lot of computers and stuff that you can interact with, and robots as you progress in the game that you can hack. And as your medic is going to be moving around the battlefield a lot, there are more opportunities for them to get in close to some of these robots and computers and hack them in combat, or hack computers and stuff like that outside of combat. And for the quirk, there is 2 things you could do, and both of them are really mostly based around keeping your medic alive. You don't want your medic to go down. If your medic goes down, it's basically all over. There's a couple of things you can do. Waste Roamer, one of them is good because it resistance to all of these different things you can see here: bleeding, poison, shocked, burning, frozen. All of these resistances, but the downside is obviously the experience gain. You could counteract this with the Bookworm background to give you that extra 5%, meaning the downside here is only a 10% decrease. But something else you could look at is medical marvel. Obviously can't be revived during combat, but as this is your medic, chances are they may not be revived by anyone else anyway, unless you have someone else who specs into the first aid section as well. But the constitution here per level, like I talked about with our mechanic melee fighter, this is also beneficial for the medic to keep them alive in the fight, as they will be moving around and healing people as you do need it. The last character we have is Mr. Sniper Mods right here. What we're going to do with Mr. Sniper Mod's background is the Goat Killer. This will increase your critical hit chance. Your snipers will not be shooting as much as some of your other characters, but you want them to be able to do as much damage as possible. Snipers are some of the most high damage characters in the game. They will be able to one-shot creatures. You want the highest critical hit chance you can get, and you want to be able to maximize their potential. So we've gone with Goat Killer. Now for starting weapon, obviously we're choosing the sniper rifle here. Not much to talk about there. In attributes, we want to put more points into coordination than we have with some of our other characters. The reason for this is that shooting a sniper rifle takes up a huge amount of action points. You want to be able to maximize your potential and put as much points into this as you possibly can. We've also put points into awareness for the range damage bonus, like we did with our leader auto rifle user, and we've put a couple of points into intelligence for the critical hit chance. You could change these a little bit. You could maybe put up your intelligence a bit more or your awareness, but what we've done here is we put intelligence on 4 and the awareness on 5. Now for skills, as you would expect, we've got 2 points into sniper rifles, and the alternative skills we've got is a little sneaky here. And the reason that we've got this is because we want to be able to use our sniper person here to sneak into combat. If you are going to engage people outside of, there are combat encounters that you can't sneak into, but the ones that you can, you want to be able to maximize your damage, and your sniper is the best potential for that. So where you want to put this in for your sniper is because of the sneak damage attack. 1, they already do the most amount of damage, and 2, you want that bonus for the sneak attack as well. We've also given them armor modding and weapon modding, 1 in each section. This is really important regardless of what character type you go with. You want to have someone who can armor mod and weapon mod, because when you use weapons, you want to be able to mod them, and same for your armor. These can be really great bonuses for the sets that you get. You will find a lot of weapon mods as you explore, and you want to be able to use them, and they do give really beneficial bonuses, especially some of the gun ones. They can actually maximize your damage potential way more than you would expect. And the last thing for this guy is quirk. Now this is really, there's not really anything specific that you could go for a sniper. There's a couple of things, like you could do the extra damage potential. You could make them, a really massive glass cannon, which you can do for sure, but obviously be mindful of the receiving of extra damage. Other things that you could do is a serial killer, which is important because you're going to be killing people a lot as a sniper. If you kill someone, you gain an extra 3 AP. The downside is that you lose 1 AP as you continue, but you're going to be maxing out your coordination. It's not that much of a downside. Hopefully you'll be able to get those kills and you can keep rolling, but they're the 2 that I would really play around with for a sniper. Again, it is up to you. If you're playing on the harder difficulties, maybe don't go the receive extra 33% damage. Serial killer might be the option to go for you. And that is our 4 starter builds, guys. I hope you enjoy these. I hope they're beneficial for you. I hope you've learned something and you can use this in your playthroughs. Do let me know in the comments below what you've started with, what builds you guys have gone for. Thank you for watching this video. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.